This place was created as an oasis. An oasis for me means a place of joy, a place of delight, a place of paradise, which is, you know, if you're going to be in London, you might as well create some paradise wherever you go, because it's made to be quite a challenging thing in amongst all the concrete and computers and, you know, that kind of technology and what some people think of as advancement. But we deal in technology here that way surpasses anything, the latest iPhone and whatever, and don't get me wrong, I have the latest iPhone or whatever, but the technology we're talking about is the same infinite intelligence that has made us. Nature, source, God, whatever you want to call it. There is an infinite intelligence at work that has created us and has created many other things on this planet to go in synergy and harmony with us. And one of those things that I'm going to talk about, the focus of today's talk, is about superberries. Not just your average strawberry or your average blueberry or your average raspberry, which are all great, don't get me wrong, and they're all wonderful foods, and of course we use them organic whenever we can, or even better than that is wildcrafted. So I'm going to touch a bit on the wildcrafted berries today. And the great thing about berries is that they're a fruit and we can grow them on our windowsill, indoors, even in London. Unlike a mango tree, say perhaps. And these wild berries and wild fruits contain one thing that has been analysed in common, which sets them apart, which you could say is their vitamin C content. And we can get into the more scientific aspects of vitamin C and the healing miracles of it. Probably the most well-known vitamin. But if I was to put it in non-scientific terms, I was to ask you guys what you thought of berries and vitamin C and all the things that supposedly contain a lot of vitamin C. An adjective that comes up a lot would be, ooh, zinginess. And I think, although some might consider it a less scientific term to call vitamin C zinginess, on an emotional level that we can all understand, you know what zinginess means. You know when something tastes that's got zing in it. And you know how you feel when you've got zing in you. So it's a lot more tangible for me, and I think for everyone to talk about it in terms of that, instead of getting into some hardcore science about the benefits of vitamin C. So if I talk about zinginess at any time, I'm talking about that berry quality, which could be called vitamin C. It has a certain sweet and sourness to it. And vitamin C really is the most studied of all vitamins, and there are several dozen books written just on that by expert doctors in all different fields of medicine and well-being. And vitamin C has been something that we've, over the process of mass industrialization, we've sort of lost touch with the power of vitamin C. Every single country in the world, all over, has their local vitamin C berry that's a super berry. In certain parts of Africa, for instance, it might be fruits, might be berries, kind of the same thing. It would be maybe the baobab. The Amazon is famous for having many of the top vitamin C berries, including the acerola cherry and the camu berry, which is the #1 vitamin C berry in the world. And really, when you taste these things, it's like, whew! It's got that lovely sour quality that lemons and limes and apple cider vinegar has, but it has so much more life force. The amount of vitamin C in some of these berries, camu is the highest medicinal ranked botanical plant in the world. It's ranked #1 food against over 14 diseases, and it ranks number 2, 3, 4, 5 against countless others. This fruit's only available as a powder, and if you can get hold of some at a health food store, it's an excellent thing to keep in your food cabinet and your medicine cabinet. But the main berries I'd love to talk about today are ones that are very easy to grow here, and the ones that spring to mind for me would be the goji berry, which has become very famous in the last decade and a half. Most of us think, oh, Tibetan goji berries, they grow in Tibet, but they grow all over the planet. They've been growing in England for nearly a couple of hundred years now. They're very easy to grow, and even if you think you don't have green fingers, which you do, because that's the way the planet was designed, that we all knew how to garden and take care of all the allies that are here to make magic and well-being and vitality with us. So apart from the goji berry, I would say one of the most indigenous ones to England would be the rosehip, which is really the fruit of the wild rose. And you know, roses are such a thing acquainted with England and considered English, but most of the roses that are used just for decorative purposes, they're beautiful. Some of them can smell great. A lot of them, the more they get hybridized and taken away from their natural form, lose their smell. But the wild rose, and indeed all roses, their flowers are edible, and they are just about one of the most lovely things you can eat on almost any street corner of England, at least in a residential area. Everyone's growing roses, and we can just eat one petal at a time. You put a rose petal in your mouth. Anyone here put a rose petal in their mouth before? One person, do people, see? I encourage you all to put a rose petal in your mouth. Now, okay, for me I would say less than 2 in 100 might have been sprayed with something. If it doesn't taste totally divine, like the most wonderful rose flavour you've ever had, spit it out. Someone's probably sprayed it with something. But apart from that, the wild rose, which is a much more delicate flower, produces this beautiful thing called the rose hip, which grow all over England. You see them in all the parks in London, many people's front gardens, and that contains the largest amount of vitamin C out of a plant that's been growing here for thousands and thousands of years. And they're very easy to pick. We can make them into teas, we can use them in juices, we can dry them and keep them all year round. And I really encourage everyone to play with that. At certain points during the year when we harvest them here, we make jams out of them at the cafe. And the same I could say of the other berries that I will include, which would probably be what's known as physalis, not syphilis, don't get worried. It's not a transmitted food. Everyone knows what I mean, the small lantern-shaped cherry tomato-looking things that are orange in colour. You can get them in a dried form these days, which are called Incan berries, because they're famous for growing in large amounts in Colombia, where they're farmed a lot. However, they grow here very easily, and again, not only are they one of the top vitamin C plants in the world and regarded with great reverence in South America especially, where they're prolific, but they happen to be the highest protein fruit in the world. Between up to 16, even 18% protein in a berry. People often ask, where do you get your protein if you eat plants? Well, it's amazing how much zinc is in these physalis, and they are still unrecognized, even though almost every big supermarket chain sells them, whether it's Sainsbury's or Tesco's or Waitrose. They all sell these big punnets of them for £1, which is amazing value for one of the most nutritious fruits growing. But we can grow our own really easily, and the great thing about berries is they're tiny, and they're tiny fruits, and they grow on tiny plants that we can grow in a window box. We can open, a goji berry. Let's say we get an organic goji berry from a health food store, which will probably go for between 30 and 60 pounds a kilo. And we can just open up an organic goji berry, and you might find 20 or 30 viable seeds in there. It's very easy to just sprout one of those and plant it in a plant box. And these fruits contain so much genetic integrity and vitality and life force that they don't need as much mollycoddling and overprotecting as our over-farmed English berries. The strawberries and the blueberries and the raspberries, because they've been grown to be sweeter and sweeter, and they've become more and more dependent and further away from the wild form, say of the wild strawberry, which a lot of us might know, but be a lot less familiar with because they're not really sold in stores, and you have to know where to pick them, or you have to know how to grow. And other things like the blueberry, a lot of those things, they're delicious berries, but you've got to eat them fresh, and they need to be farmed very intensively, even if it's organic, because they can go moldy very quickly. And one of the main reasons that they would go moldy very quickly is because they've got a lot less life force. And generally when there's less life force, there's less nutrients. And when there's less nutrients, there's less life force. Life force is just like the aura, the electromagnetic field of the nutrients.